Yeah. Hopefully I got everything with Coach on too, because I didn't stop recording. Fix this. Yeah.
All right, let me know you're ready. Okay. 3, 2. Dima Mixon, Devin, Witson here at the Rock. Southern Miss 24. I'm actually looking up at that. I'm going to start. So I'm a better intro.
Yep. Okay. Just looking at the scoreboard here.
Devin Witson, Dima Mixon. I'm looking up at that big scoreboard right in front of me, and it says South Florida 49, Southern Miss 24. Devin, a game that was pretty close up until about middle of the third quarter. Southern Miss jumps up to that 14-0 lead. South Florida 28 unanswered. It ended up being, what is that? I'm trying to do quick math. 49-7 unanswered points for South Florida until the Southern Miss late touchdown at the end. I think we pretty much nailed this game. Knew it would be somewhat close in the beginning, and then South Florida pulls away at the end. But there's a lot of frustration to be had for Southern Miss tonight.
I can definitely feel the frustration, just not only if you're a Southern Miss fan, just in general, because you see this team very talented. I mean, first off, hold their own against a USF squad that honestly went into last week, pretty much played their hearts out against Alabama. Then just to go up 14-0, I mean, it's a great start. Phenomenal job here. I mean, especially love the little trick play that they called with Tate and Ethan. But just to go really reflect on the game as a whole before I get into my main points, somewhat solid at the beginning. Then as the game progressed, it just ended up going downhill. Like you ended up in a downward spiral, which obviously no team wants to do that. And as we still look up at this giant scoreboard here, 49-24, in any universe, doesn't matter the team, is not a good result.
Yeah, and we can just start from the first quarter. I think it was the best start Southern Miss football's had in a long time, especially against a team of this caliber with South Florida. You know, they drive right down the field. You mentioned the trick play that Ethan double passed back to Tate Rodemaker. Rodemaker gallops down to about the 45 right over there, and then a couple of more plays, and he finds Kyron Heath for the touchdown. South Florida goes right back down the field. They turn them over on downs, and Southern Miss comes right back 14-0 just like that. And then, I look at a couple of plays that really shifted the momentum of this game. Obviously, going 3 and out 4 straight times in the second quarter. I mean, you just can't do that. But again, we said all week, and if you watched our videos, which I hope you do, we said all week that Southern Miss can't and won't win a shootout against South Florida, and we ended up being.
It's honestly just, I hate to say it, but you're proven right. I mean, I hate to say it, but it's the truth. Because I feel like it feel like for Southern Miss, for them to win, as we have the cheerleaders doing their send-off in the background, if you can hear that. Not sure if you can. But just in general, getting into a shootout with a team like South Florida, who love to take shots. They love to just play high risk, high reward, which is what we saw a lot of times. I mean, Byron Brown is probably one of the first scrambling quarterbacks I've really seen Southern Miss play this year. I mean, Kentucky, Barker Vandegrift, more of a in the pocket, a little bit of an improviser type of quarterback. Then against Southeastern, quarterback's really not as mobile. You never really see him outside the pocket much. But this is the first real test that Southern Miss had on trying to contain a scrambling quarterback, which as we get closer and closer to Sunbelt play, a player like, Jordan McLeod or Jalen Rayner, this is pretty much, I want to say, a future outlook to what not to do, it's how to stop a direct quarterback, because they just couldn't contain Byron Brown all day. And it wasn't just that. I mean, we also mentioned that in the trenches, this game had to be won. That's where this game was going to be won, offensive, defensive side, and as Dima's look at the stats, one massive thing that stands out to me, it has to be the run game. I mean, where do we begin?
I mean, I'm looking at this, and I'm not really following the running game stats when I'm actually up there in the box, especially during the fourth quarter, because at that point I'm starting to write my stories and stuff like that. So I'm kind of like checked out from the game when it's this bad. 369 rushing yards for South Florida. I didn't even think that was real until I just saw that right here. 369 for South Florida, and then 90 for Southern Miss. I mean, that's the game right there. They have two players over 100 yards rushing. They almost had 3, including they were 8 yards away. So honestly, a couple of sacks because it's the quarterback Byron Brown from 3 players over 100 yards rushing for South Florida. That's the game, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, you take that away, even if you cut that in half, you'd probably take out 14 points, and then it's, 35-24?
Give or take.
So, I mean, what are you going to do? But we talked about the trenches. We talked about the offensive line. Poor South Florida could dominate this game. And, boy, 369, I think we can say it safely. They said,
as we like to call people, if you remember the good old 4th Street days. I mean, also shout out to anyone who remembered the good old 4th Street podcast back on Twitter or X. Dogs. That is safe to say, and just to be completely honest, that is where this game was completely won for South Florida. In the trenches, on offensive, defensive side. Just Byron Brown, pretty much, whenever he had a chance to scramble, pretty much just ran away with it. He had time nearly, let's say, give or take 50, 70%, and really he used it to his advantage, which is not surprising. This is what Byron Brown does. This is what USF does. This is how they play. This is how they get wins. Another thing that we got to talk about somewhat is just penalties. There was lots of times, and I think we can go back to first half and somewhat a bit in the second half where Southern Miss, they got, stops on 3rd down, yet it's just penalty after penalty after penalty, racking up the yards like it's a game of Monopoly, which no team wants to do that. You don't want to ever see yourself get a stop on 3rd down, then you're straight up, okay, we're going to get a penalty. Now it just completely shifts your momentum, which honestly, I feel like that's another thing that pretty much killed Southern Miss in this game.
Yeah, I mean, you can easily put 7 points off that score for South Florida just on that. That drive, I think, to take a 21-14 lead for South Florida. 3rd and 9, hands in the face. 3rd and 8 or whatever it was, late hit out of bounds over here, which I thought was kind of a soft call. Both of those penalties, first downs for South Florida, you just can't do that against a team of this caliber who you know you're an underdog to. I'm dying over here. You're an underdog to. You've got to be able to capitalize. You've got to be able to get off the field. And Southern Miss defense just could not get off the field tonight. When I look at this game over a whole, obviously kind of got away from in the end. But there's several plays you can point to tonight that if they go for Southern Miss's way, it's a different ball game. But Devin, we say that so many times so many plays, it could have gone their way. And Will Hall said something very interesting in the post-game press conference. He talked about how their red zone execution was terrible. He was saying that it was, they just need to execute. Their execution was just flat out terrible. And then he was asked a question, and he talked about how it's just execution, about the first 2 series that they had, which was the 14-0, first 2 series. When they execute really well, they can be a really good football team. But when they don't execute, man, does it come out so obviously. I mean, it's not even like it's, they just accidentally threw it out of bounds and it's okay. When they don't execute, the whole game falls apart. And it's why does Southern Miss have to play such a perfect game to win? And that's some of the questions that I'm leaving myself right now of when they're executing fine, which they did in the first quarter, it's awesome. But even if they don't execute to that level, it feels like the whole world is falling apart. It's almost they have to play a perfect game every single week to win, which obviously all coaches strive for that, but that's an unrealistic expectation. You can't expect them to play a perfect game every week. You're going to have those penalties. You're going to have the drop passes. But the fact of the matter is that they have those executional problems in the biggest moments of the game, it seems like, every single week. And Devin, it's we'd be amiss to say that we can't talk about the red zone because the red zone offense tonight was terrible.
Honestly, there's no other word to describe it. Terrible. I mean, so many times Southern Miss had chances that either wasted, either turned over, or just literally you can play the SpongeBob womp 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 theme over the red zone offense today. And I I like to crack jokes, people, but there's no other real way you can really describe this because overall, Southern Miss they had fight because if you remember our preseason predictions. We said this could be a game that would be close if Southern Miss played a perfect game, which, obviously, as Dima said, everyone tries to play a perfect game. It's what everyone wants. You want to see the team play amazing, phenomenal. That didn't happen. Too many mistakes, too many just ridiculous mistakes, honestly, from penalties to just plays that went AWOL, just a lot of plays that honestly got away from them. And just even looking another thing I want to bring up to you, we got, well, not really bring it up, but Tate Rodemaker, Ethan Crawford, and somewhat John White, because we saw all three in action tonight, which was a first to see, and I want to honestly get your thoughts on that, because we didn't see Tate pretty much the entire second half. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. Crawford may or may not have gone out. We don't know yet. There was no one has pretty much said anything. We'll probably hear something maybe sometime next week. Remember, please follow us on all of our socials to find out more. And also, John White didn't look too bad in his in his moments when he had a chance. Didn't look too bad at all. I mean, first play connected for I think either 50 or 30-ish yards. Gets it out the red zone, and again, center miss falls short. And what happens? A missed field goal, where we can probably write that story on that a lot of times, because you mentioned it. Southern Miss going for a field goal when it's pretty much, the game may be getting, but why not, Tanisha? Why not have at it? I mean, you're down big. Do you really want to just go out and take a three, or just keep it pushing? Go for it. Take a risk. See what happens. Yet, I don't see anything. I don't.
Yeah, it was a very bizarre call. I'm not going to lie. I mean, you're down 9-21 at that point, and they take the field goal. I don't know, man. I don't know. I don't know what that says about. I don't know. I don't get paid enough to comment about that. But the point is about the quarterbacks, and I want to go back to that. Tate Rodemaker, I thought looked really good to start this game. He didn't really have any mistakes. If they would have lost, he wouldn't have been the reason. I think that's a good point to make him. If I had to give him a grade, it would probably be, there were some throws he missed or whatever, but he played pretty good. And I don't even know if he got sacked. Yeah, no sacks tonight. Like the offensive line gave him great pass protection. He tweaked his ankle, is what Will Hall said, and then he didn't look the same. So they put Ethan in. Ethan provided them an immediate spark right before halftime, and then outside of halftime to cut that lead back to 14 or 7. I can't remember. But then Ethan got hurt, and it did not sound good from Will Hall in the post game. He said that it was. He said he didn't know, and that the medical professionals are looking at him right now. So, in my opinion, if you got to come off the field and medical personnel is looking at you, it might not be good at all. Because we don't want to speculate. As Devin said, we'll know Tuesday because we'll see the team, and maybe Will Hall will have an update for us on the coach's call on Monday morning. But, the quarterbacks played well. I don't think the quarterbacks is the reason they lost this game. The reason they lost this game is execution, like it is normally, but it's also the fact of the matter is that South Florida had 369 rushing yards. I mean, again, I didn't even realize that until I stood on this field and talked to you on this video. I would have asked Will Hall about it, but it's just something that's just a mind-boggling stat in a sense that Southern Miss hasn't played that bad rushing defense up to this point. We did mention how USF was probably the best running team that Southern Miss has faced all season, but 369 is crazy, and that's obviously the reason why they lost. There's not a lot more to it, in a couple of the 4 straight 3-and-outs. But I mean, they were in this game. They did show they can compete, but again, when they don't execute to perfection, it shows, and I don't understand why. It just doesn't make sense to me, because there's a lot of teams, and I know that the answer is like, well, they're just not good enough or whatever. But there's a lot of teams, even in the group of 5. Like USF tonight didn't play a perfect game.
Honestly, that's one of the probably the most mediocre performance I've seen from USF all year. I mean, you can probably ask a USF fan, they'll probably say that's not USF. There's a lot of things they have to work out, because next week USF plays Miami. And Miami's a whole different ball game. So USF are probably thinking, we got to do better than that, because they probably thought they're going to come in here, stomp, and go out. So USF, they're probably thinking, all right, we didn't do better enough. Now we got to go prepare for Miami, which in their right, that's pretty much their biggest game of the year, because it's Miami. I mean, Miami versus Tampa. But I digress.
Yeah, but again, I mean, it's not like USF played a perfect game tonight. They still put up 49 points. So all I'm saying is that when Southern Miss doesn't execute, it feels like the world just shatters. And I just don't understand why that's the case. I don't know if that's a mentality thing, or if it's like, I don't know. And they were saying the defense was getting tired and stuff. But, I mean, when you look at, I don't have the time of possession on here. Yeah, right here, time of possession, 33 minutes for South Florida. I mean, Southern Miss was at 26. I mean, that's not that much different. Like, I don't know, man. I don't know what to say. the bottom line is South Florida 49, Southern Miss 24, 369 yards of rushing for South Florida. That's the whole story of the game. Obviously, then the 3 turnovers for Southern Miss, which didn't help at all. The Davis Dalton fumble was huge. The pick that Ethan threw in the red zone was
Tipped
huge.
off by
Tipped off. I mean, that to me was the game right there.
Yeah.
I mean, they could have made it a 1-score game right there. That pick happened. South Florida goes down right immediately and scores. So several plays could have gone their way to make this game close. But again, I feel like we're saying that every week. I feel like we're pretty redundant. But again, we all expected them to be at this place by this point, 1-2. Next week at Jacksonville State. Devin, quick thoughts on this. Seeming to be the make or break moment, the moment of truth for this team. If they go and lose that game, it could be a long, at least in my opinion, if they go and lose that game next weekend, I think it could be a really long season. If they go and win it, 2-2 headed into conference play, nobody can complain. But I feel like next week is a moment of truth for this team.
There's no question. No ifs, no ands, no buts. If Southern Miss go into Jacksonville, Alabama, not Jacksonville, Florida, I know it's probably going to be confusing for some people, but Jacksonville, Alabama, remember it. It is pretty much a make or break game, not only for Southern Miss, but for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure fan base are probably, who only knows what is being said on Twitter. But I feel like if there is a chance, well, obviously there is a chance that anyone could win on any Sunday or Saturday. If Southern Miss go to Jacksonville and lose, there will probably be a lot of hot seats. A lot of faces and a lot of things are going to just be turning in ways that honestly, not I, not you, not anybody else can expect. Because going against a team like Jacksonville State, coming off their first FBS season, 9-4, amazing, phenomenal for anyone who just make the jump to the 1A level, not the AA level. But just for that, it's amazing. And now, I'm not sure what's their record at the moment.
Yeah, I was going to say it. That's what I was looking at. So Jacksonville State lost to Eastern Michigan today in 2 double overtime, 37-34. So Jacksonville State will be 0-3 playing. See, I'm dying. Southern Miss will be Jacksonville State will be 0-3 playing Southern Miss next week. So it'll be a very interesting game. And again, I think it'll be a moment of truth for this Golden Eagle team.
And I'm saying this, if Southern Miss managed to lose to an 0-3 team, I feel like a lot of things are going to have to change. A lot.
And again, we don't want to speculate on anything, but it does still feel like the moment of truth next week. South Florida 49, Southern Miss 24. That's Devin Witson. I'm Dima Mixon. Go follow all of our coverage on SMTmedia.com. Thanks for watching Instant Reactions. We'll see you on Tuesday, barring another hurricane,
Please.
for the Tuesday after show. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.
Don't speak the hurricane into existence. All right. Yeah, let me go grab the bags and that. I'll make it easier. Well, pretty much got to get out early. Sadly.